Chosen one, the verdict has already been handed down from the highest throne. While you endured hits from every angle, the spiritual realm was recording every strike. The atmosphere has shifted because the Most High is furious with your enemies. They tortured an earth angel, now demanding respect for your name. Your name is being restored, and the respect you are owed is being commanded by the divine itself. There was a season when you were simply living in your gifts. You were moving in your calling, building something genuine, not chasing fame or positioning yourself for power in the way the world measures it. You were simply being what you were created to be, an earth angel. You carry a specific frequency, a specific quality of light, a specific kind of truth that most people spend entire lifetimes searching for without ever finding. You had it organically, you moved in it without forcing it, and it drew people toward you. That drawing is the detail you need to hold. It is the origin point of everything that happened after. Here is what nobody teaches you about carrying genuine gifts. It is not only good-hearted people who feel what you carry. Darkness feels it too, perhaps more acutely than anyone else, because darkness is not indifferent to light. Darkness is threatened by light, and when something is threatened, it does not simply sit still and accept the discomfort. It mobilizes. That mobilization is what happened to you. While you were living your calling without agenda, something in the atmosphere around you shifted. Certain people took notice, not to celebrate what you represented, but to calculate how to contain it, to get close enough to exploit it, and to quietly plan what they would do if exploitation proved impossible. They were planning for the version of you that could not be bought, controlled, or redirected. These people were watching you before you ever turned your attention toward them. You were already being assessed, already being studied, already being positioned inside a plan you had no awareness of. While you moved through your life with your heart open, and your gifts flowing freely, and your trust extended to the people around you, the war against you was already in its planning stages. That is where this begins. Everything that follows makes more sense once you accept that this started long before the moment you recognized it. At the top sits a commanding figure, someone who presents to the public as a person of authority who has spent considerable time cultivating an image of stability, power, and trustworthy leadership. This is someone who knows how to make people feel chosen when they are permitted into the inner orbit. This figure releases just enough access and favor to keep those around them loyal, hungry, and competing for continued approval. The surface presentation is charismatic and assured, but underneath the polished exterior is something calculated and cold. Every person in this figure's orbit exists there because of the function they serve: access, cover, execution, or influence. The moment someone stops serving that function, the moment they become inconvenient or begin to see too clearly, they get discarded, sometimes quietly, sometimes publicly, but always without genuine remorse. This is not the first time this figure has operated this way. It has worked before because the image held, and because no accusation could survive contact with how well that image was maintained. That is about to change permanently. Surrounding this figure is an inner circle, people who are fully aware of who this figure actually is, and have made deliberate peace with that knowledge, because the proximity rewards them more than their integrity costs them. These are not bystanders who happen to be nearby. These are active participants. They agree, they plan, they execute, and their complicity in what was done to you is not passive, it is chosen. At the operational level are the foot soldiers, people who genuinely believe they have finally been accepted, that after being on the outside of something significant, they have been recognized and brought in. Their desperation for belonging makes them dangerous, because it makes them willing to execute without asking enough questions. They tell themselves whatever they need to justify what they are being asked to do. One of those foot soldiers had direct access to your life, not a distant acquaintance. This was someone close, someone who had been inside your trust, your world, your private thoughts, your vulnerability. Someone who sat at your table, looked you directly in your eyes, and was simultaneously reporting back and passing your information to the structure that wanted to bring you to your knees. That is who built the war against you. Now pay close attention to what happens next. Before the mechanics of the attack are described, you need to understand precisely why your name became the specific focus of this operation. This part rarely gets examined, and without it, the full weight of what was done to you cannot be properly understood. Your name carries genuine weight, not because you pursued recognition or manufactured significance. Your name carries weight because of the divine assignment attached to your existence, and because of what flows through you when you move in your calling. In certain conversations happening far from where you stood, your name was being traded. It was being referenced in discussions you were never invited to, and attached to agendas, associations and positions you had never agreed to, and never would have agreed to. The authority figure at the top recognized the value of being associated with what you represent, and leveraged that association without your knowledge or consent. If these words stirred your consciousness, hype this video to help more chosen ones awaken to this. When you began to pull back, when your discernment started flagging things, and you began creating space and making clear through your actions that you were not available to be used, your name became a liability in their hands rather than an asset. They had been borrowing against something they did not own, and when the asset reclaimed itself, the entire operation shifted its objective. What had been exploitation became erasure. A discredited version of you was safer for them than a free version of you. A version of you that appeared unstable, could not stand credibly before the public and name what had been done without being dismissed. This was not impulsive. This was a strategic decision made by people who understood exactly what they were doing, and the Most High witnessed every step of that decision as it was being made. Here is how the assault arrived. Not from the front, never from the front. A direct confrontation carried too much visibility and too much risk of making you stronger, so instead it came from the side, from angles you were not watching, delivered through channels you had trusted. The operation was designed to appear as nothing from the outside, while dismantling your life simultaneously from several directions. Your resources were drained, not in a single dramatic moment, but incrementally, in ways that each resembled ordinary misfortune when examined in isolation. Your reputation was handled quietly, with whispers placed in the right ears, no fingerprints, and no traceable source. What you experienced was a gradual cooling of certain connections, a subtle shift in how particular people looked at you, and access that had previously been open, no longer opening. On the spiritual level, and let this be stated with full clarity, there was intentional, directed spiritual hostility being sent your way. This was not metaphor. There were people in that circle who understood the mechanics of spiritual warfare and who were actively deploying every available instrument against you. The assault operated on the physical level, the relational level, the financial level, and the spiritual level, all simultaneously. Above everything else, what they needed was your silence, because when you spoke, when you moved in your truth, named what you perceived, and brought your gifts into public view, you exposed them. Not because you targeted them, but because truth moving freely cannot coexist with certain kinds of darkness without illuminating it. You were revealing them simply by being what you were made to be. That was the thing they could not tolerate. Look, you already know the attacks weren't random, and if you're paying attention, you can feel it. Their walls are closing in. You've also noticed something else. A lot of Chosen One channels on YouTube have gone quiet. Videos removed, voices pushed off the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice, so let's talk about what we're doing about it. That's why I built Destiny Engine, and when you join, you're not just supporting your favorite channels, you're also fueling your own rise. It's a 360 win. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired, while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning, so everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your destiny engine for $7 today and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. The closest person to you became the primary instrument of the operation. That person fed information back, created vulnerabilities, and engineered circumstances designed to make you appear unreliable, so that whatever you said about this situation would be dismissed as personal bitterness rather than received as credible truth. For a brief window, the isolation this created worked in their favor. When no one around you is confirming what you see, when the people who should be standing beside you are either confused or compromised, when you are alone in carrying the truth, that isolation becomes almost unbearable. That was the state they were deliberately engineering. They needed you to either collapse or lash out, because one of those two outcomes was required for their plan to succeed. Neither happened. One catastrophic miscalculation undid everything they built. They underestimated what kind of person they were dealing with. Earth angels do not fracture the way ordinary people fracture. The pressure they survive is not merely suffering, it is refinement, and the gap between those two things is enormous. Suffering consumes a person, refinement produces something. When you pass through fire and emerge from the other side, you are not the same person who entered. Everything unnecessary has been burned away, and what remains is pure calling, pure perception, pure connection to the divine assignment on your life. Every whisper campaign they launched forced you inward and sharpened your discernment. Every resource they drained made you more resourceful. Every relationship they poisoned helped you identify with absolute clarity who was genuinely for you. Every spiritual attack they sent that you withstood made you spiritually stronger in ways that cannot be manufactured through any human process, only through being forged. In trying to destroy you, they were producing the very thing that would eventually be used against them. They were building the instrument of their own undoing, and they had no idea. Beyond that, there is something they could not have accounted for, even if they had known to look. The Most High keeps a record, not a loose or approximate one, but a precise, exhaustive, comprehensive account of every decision made, every resource moved, every whisper spoken, and every plan assembled against an earth angel. The Most High does not forget. Evidence does not go cold in the divine court. Cases do not get buried. What was done to you has been fully documented in the court that carries the authority that matters most above every human institution, and that court had already issued its ruling before the dust of the attack had even settled. You did not break. Let that be stated plainly and without softening. You bent. You staggered under the weight of it. There were long dark stretches where the pressure nearly exceeded what felt holdable. You questioned yourself. You were not spared the full human experience of what was being done to you. You felt every piece of it, but you did not collapse. You did not disappear. You did not become the explosive, lashing-out version of yourself that they needed you to become in order for their narrative about you to stick. That refusal, that quiet, stubborn, almost defiant insistence on remaining yourself, is the exact moment the entire dynamic shifted. When a chosen one is attacked and does not fall, a response is activated. And that response does not originate from the chosen one. It comes from the source that placed the calling on their life. The Most High does not observe the torture of an earth angel and remain neutral. The Most High watches, records, and allows the test to reach its fullest extent, because the test carries purpose. But the moment the purpose is fulfilled, the moment the earth angel demonstrates that they cannot be broken, what was being held back is released. What was released on your behalf is not proportional in any human sense. It is vast. It is precisely targeted, and it is already executing. Keep this in mind. The person who was closest to you in this operation, the inside instrument, the one who used personal access to execute against you, is the first point of collapse. Remember that, because the direction that person falls is the thing that nobody saw coming. There is a wider layer to this that demands your attention, because the authority figure at the top did not build this operation alone. Behind that figure is a collective, a group, an organization that has been operating with public visibility while concealing the true nature of what it does and what it represents. Plain sight is the operative concept here. The members of this collective are not hidden in obscurity. They are visible, sometimes celebrated, and often spoken of in favorable terms. Their public presentation is deliberately aligned with respectable things, and that visibility is not accidental, it is the strategy. The best concealment is the absence of concealment. When you present yourself as something obvious and innocuous, no one looks for what is underneath, but you looked. That is what earth angels do. Your discernment does not respond to public packaging, it responds to actual frequency, and the frequency emanating from this group never matched its presentation. You felt the gap. You could not always name it precisely, but you registered it, and that registration was not paranoia or oversensitivity. It was your God-given spiritual perception, functioning exactly as it was designed to function. This group has been conducting a systematic harvesting, not only of material resources, but of energy, attention, and the devotion of people who believed they were investing in something genuine. That kind of operation requires, above all else, that the people who can perceive it accurately stay silent. Every time your voice reached someone, it introduced the possibility that the person hearing you would begin to feel something they had been suppressing, begin asking questions they had stopped asking, and begin sensing the gap between what they had been presented and what was actually real. You were not simply a personal problem for one figure at the top. You were a systemic problem for the entire operation. What felt like an attack coming from one direction was in reality pressure being applied from multiple levels simultaneously, because your existence as a clear-sighted, openly speaking earth angel threatened the entire architecture of what was being built. This understanding does not diminish you, it elevates your position. You are not a victim of something chaotic and random. You are a witness, a living, standing, breathing witness to what this collective actually is. And a credible, still-standing witness is the single most dangerous presence on earth to people who are determined to keep truth buried. You are not a victim waiting for intervention. You are a chosen one who passed through fire and arrived on the other side, carrying more clarity, more authority, more sharpened perception, and more divine backing than existed before the attack began. That is not a victim. That is a refined instrument. The Most High does not deploy the wounded to the front. The Most High deploys those who have been tested until the test could produce no more, those whose gifts and character and faith have been demonstrated under the most extreme possible conditions. The assault on your life was not evidence of weakness. It was confirmation of genuine threat potential. Coordinated, multi-level, resourced operations that combine physical, financial, relational and spiritual attacks are not assembled against people who pose no danger. That level of mobilization is reserved exclusively for something genuinely powerful. Look at how hard they work to stop you. That intensity is a direct measure of your power. So the posture shifts right now. You are not petitioning for the Most High to intervene. The Most High is furious because someone violated what belongs under divine protection. This is not rescue. This is a sovereign response to a direct transgression against sacred territory. And the people on the receiving end of that response do not have any framework for understanding what is coming toward them. The energy moving forward is not hope. It is certainty. Not, I think things might turn around, but watch what follows for the people who came against me. That is the frequency of divine justice in full motion. That is who you are in this moment. Respect. That word sits at the center of this entire moment, and the distinction between asking for respect and demanding it is not subtle. It is the difference between two entirely different spiritual postures. Asking for respect is what you do when you are uncertain about your own worth. It is the posture of someone still working to persuade others of their value, still operating from a deficit, hoping that the right presentation or argument will finally cause people to see correctly. That has never been your genuine posture. Even in the moments when the assault caused you to question yourself, even in the seasons when the isolation made you wonder if your perception was reliable, underneath all of that wavering was something bedrock. There was a knowing that would not be fully extinguished, a recognition that your name carried something real, that your gifts were genuinely assigned, and that what was being done to your name was a lie regardless of how many people had been exposed to that lie. Respect is not being requested on your behalf, it is being demanded by the Most High on your behalf. And when the Most High demands something, the question of whether the demand will be honored is not open. The circumstances get arranged so that the demand is fulfilled. Every revelation, every exposure, every collapse of the structure that was built against you, all of it is being positioned so that the restoration of proper recognition for your name is not a possibility, it is an inevitability. Every person who whispered against your name is going to witness what happens when the full account of this situation is made visible. Every association that distanced itself from you based on what those whispers produced is going to face a reckoning with what it chose to believe. The people who elevated the liars while quietly sidelining you, even those who did so only through convenient silence, are going to have to reckon with their participation. Your name is anointed. That was true before any of this happened. What is anointed cannot be permanently defiled by human hands. It can be smudged temporarily, and that smudge can last long enough to cause real damage. But the anointing reasserts. It always does. And when it reasserts on the other side of this full exposure, your name will not simply return to what it was before they touched it. It will carry the luminosity of everything it survived. It will be louder, weightier, and more undeniable than it was at its peak before the attack. That is the respect being demanded, not polite acknowledgement from people who feel socially obligated, full, visible, public recognition of what you carry, what was done to you, what you endured, and what you are standing in right now. While the external collapse of this structure is unfolding, something equally significant is happening inside the people who came against you, inside their private thoughts, their sleep, and their unguarded moments. Divine justice does not begin externally, it begins in the interior. The people who orchestrated this are not resting well. That is not a figure of speech. Something has been disturbing them at the level where no persona or public performance can follow. When they close their eyes, the moments of their deliberate choices replay. They see what they chose. They see who you actually are. They see the full weight of what they set in motion. And in that unguarded space, stripped of every rationalization, they know what they did was wrong. They know the nature of what they came against. And they know, at a level beneath conscious acknowledgement, what they activated when they made those choices. This internal disruption is the Most High insisting on truth at the spirit level before the physical consequences fully arrive. It is not punitive in a retributive sense. It is a final reckoning being offered from the inside before the outside arrives with its full force. The Most High does not delight in destruction. The Most High insists on truth. And when that insistence operates at the spirit level, the result is exactly what your enemies are experiencing: restlessness, an inability to quiet the weight of what they carry, and the sense of being watched by something that knows everything. No amount of money resolves this internal experience. No level of spin or image management reaches this place. It is operating underneath all of that, in the space where no curated persona has access, and it is preparing the ground for everything that follows externally. Meanwhile, Something different is happening for you. Your rest is beginning to shift. The certainty that has been building slowly at first, then with increasing momentum, is transferring into your body, into your quiet moments, into the spaces that used to be filled with anxiety. That certainty is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is what it feels like when your spirit is synchronized with the verdict that has already been handed down on your behalf. And operating from that alignment is the most powerful state a human being can inhabit. Now the collapse begins, and it begins from inside the enemy camp. The person who was closest to you in this operation, the one who leveraged personal access to execute against you, reaches a breaking point. Not because of a dramatic external confrontation, and not because of a revelation arriving from outside. The breaking point arrives because the internal calculation that kept this person loyal to the structure finally tips. The protection they believed they were operating under has been quietly withdrawing. The authority figure has been creating distance through small, almost imperceptible moves, making things slightly harder to reach, allowing certain communications to go unanswered, and permitting miscommunications to accumulate in ways that are too consistent to be accidental. When this person recognizes what is being done to them, something shifts irrevocably. The realization lands that they are being positioned as the primary liability, that when the full weight of this situation finally arrives, they are going to be the one standing directly underneath it. The protection and belonging they believed they had earned was never real. They were always a buffer, always expendable, always a disposable instrument, rather than a valued member of anything. That realization is the moment their loyalty ends. And here is the precise reversal that makes this moment so significant. The same mechanism used against you, the inside access, the personal betrayal, the information flowing through a trusted channel toward people who wanted to use it against you, that same mechanism is now activating inside the enemy camp, directed against the people who deployed it. The person who carried out your betrayal becomes the betrayer of the very structure that used them, and the information they carry, the first-hand knowledge, the specific details they were directly involved in, begins moving toward exactly the people who are positioned to act on it. What made the attack on you possible is now making the collapse of your enemies inevitable. The instrument has turned around. There is one more layer to this. The family members of this person had already been observing this pattern long before this moment arrived. This is not the first time this person has made choices like these. The people who know them most intimately, who have watched this pattern unfold before and had their own experiences of being harmed by it, had already begun speaking quietly to the right people at the right time. The circle this person assumed was safe was not safe. Blood did not provide cover, it provided witnesses. The first point of collapse falls, and its falling sets everything else in motion. The authority figure at the top is in a state of premature relief. The sense has settled in that the most dangerous exposure has passed. Plans are being made for what comes next, and this person is carrying the posture of someone who has navigated a difficult situation and emerged on the other side intact, moving forward with confidence, not realizing the edge is immediately ahead. And then everything arrives at once. The testimony from the inside surfaces. The cooperation of people who had been quietly building their account becomes available. The financial evidence that had been accumulating along its own trail arrives in the right hands. The specific material that the authority figure believed had been permanently buried, the piece that, if it stayed hidden, might have provided a margin of protection, resurfaces completely and undeniably in the hands of the people who are positioned to act on it. There is nothing to manage. There is no image craft that survives contact with what is now fully visible. Every person who was connected to the authority figure through calculation, through desire for access, protection, and proximity to perceived power, begins immediately calculating their exit. This is what always happens when power built on false foundations collapses. The people who attach themselves to it for what it could provide do not stay to defend it. They move fast without sentiment, and the authority figure discovers in the sharpest possible way that what they believed was loyalty was always conditional. Stripped of the image, stripped of the network, stripped of every layer of protection that the carefully constructed facade had provided, the authority figure stands alone with the full account of what they chose to do. The ruthlessness, the deliberate direction of harm toward an earth angel, every transaction that was made to facilitate the operation, every person who was used and discarded along the way, all of it is documented, all of it is on record, and all of it is meeting consequences that are proportional to the seriousness of what was done. The entire book gets thrown, not a section, every page. This is what the fury of the Most High looks like when it finally releases without restraint. This is what swift, comprehensive, undeniable divine justice looks like when it arrives for a target that had no idea it was being hunted. The game that was already over is now visibly and publicly over. Now the lens turns fully toward you, because the collapse of what was built against you is only one side of what is happening. The other side, equally real, equally certain, and already in motion, is the restoration of everything that was taken, blocked or suppressed. When a system of suppression collapses, what it was suppressing does not merely return to where it was before the suppression began, it accelerates. All the momentum that was being held back, all the opportunities that were being deliberately blocked, all the connections that were being quietly undermined, and all the forward movement that was being strangled, when the weight pressing all of that down is removed, the release is not gradual. It is sudden, it launches, because it was compressed under pressure, and compressed things do not gradually resume when the pressure lifts, they spring forward. Your resources are returning. The material things that were drained, the opportunities redirected away from you, the financial momentum that was disrupted, the platforms and access that were being held closed, a path is opening that is concrete and tangible. You are going to be able to put your hands on what is coming. This is not a spiritual metaphor for vague internal peace. This is real, visible, material change moving in your favor. Your name is being corrected in every place it was damaged. When the people who are doing the whispering are exposed and discredited, the whispers lose every platform they occupied. The narrative that was constructed about you collapses along with the credibility of the people who built it. And your name, which was sacred before any of this began, which carried anointing before any human hand attempted to smudge it, comes back through this exposure not merely clean but luminous. It comes back heavier with the weight of what it survived, and more undeniable because of what it withstood. The respect that was owed to you, that was being actively withheld and redirected toward people who had no right to it, is now being demanded on your behalf by a force that does not wait to see whether the demand will be honored. That force positions events so that the honoring of that demand is inevitable. You are not receiving a consolation prize, you are receiving what was always yours, arriving with the full accumulated force of everything that tried to prevent it from reaching you. The things revealed through this entire experience about who you are, about what you carry, about the nature of the protection on your life, these are not seasonal truths that apply only to this particular opposition. They are permanently true. They were true before the assault began. They are true now. They will be true in every season of opposition that follows this one. You are an earth angel, a chosen one, and the path of a chosen one does not include immunity from opposition. It includes the guarantee that opposition will not be the final word. The attack on your life was not a sign that something went wrong. It was confirmation that something is very, very right. The size of what was mobilized against you is testimony to the size of what you carry. The desperation of the assault is testimony to the power of what you represent. The attack has become your testimony. The very thing that was designed to erase your credibility is now the most compelling account you possess. because there is nothing that commands attention and demands recognition like watching someone survive what was thrown at you and emerge from the other side, standing whole, chosen, backed, clear and ready. Your enemies wanted to make you yesterday's news. Instead, they made you the account that people are leaning in to hear. They wanted to push you to the edges of visibility. Instead, they pushed you toward the center of a divine reckoning. They wanted to erase your name. Instead, they ensured that your name gets spoken with weight in places they will never have access to again. The Most High demanded respect on your name, and everything in the universe is complying with that demand. What was done in secret is being answered in the open. What was taken is being returned with the full force of every season it was withheld, pressing behind it. What was built against you is being dismantled, and everything that was used in that construction is being repurposed to build you up. And you, chosen one, you are not standing here simply grateful to have made it through. You are standing here as someone who, in the deepest part of your spirit, always knew this was the outcome. Even in the most brutal moments of the assault, even when the weight was near unbearable, there was something in you that refused the ending they were writing, something that held, something that said clearly and without wavering, "This is not where it ends for me." That something was right. This is where the next chapter begins. The Earth Angel they tortured is not limping away from the wreckage. The Earth Angel is walking through it with the full authority of someone who owns every inch of the ground beneath their feet. Because you do. The game was always already over. Welcome to the other side of the war. Welcome to your elevation. Stay in your light, chosen one. What is coming belongs to you. It always did.